The conference hall was designed to impress before anyone even spoke. Polished oak tables stretched across the room, flags stood in perfect alignment along the walls, and a massive digital screen glowed softly behind the podium. It was the kind of place where careers were shaped with handshakes and a single sentence could echo for years. High-ranking officers filled the seats, their uniforms crisp, medals catching the overhead light. Laughter drifted easily among them, controlled, confident, familiar. She sat near the middle row, posture straight, hands folded calmly in her lap. Her uniform was simpler than most in the room. Fewer decorations, no unnecessary shine. To an untrained eye, she looked almost out of place, like someone who had wandered into the wrong meeting. But she hadn't. She belonged there just as much as anyone else, more than some. The general took the stage with practiced ease. He was known for his sharp tongue and commanding presence, the kind of leader who enjoyed controlling a room not just through authority, but through humor that walked dangerously close to insult. People laughed because they were supposed to. Because not laughing felt risky. He spoke about leadership, about resilience, about sacrifice. The words were impressive, polished by repetition. Heads nodded. Pens scribbled notes that would never be read again. Then his gaze drifted across the room, and stopped on her. A pause. Just long enough. Well, he said with a half-smile, tapping the microphone, we have quite a diverse group today. A few chuckles followed. Officers from different units, different backgrounds, even different levels of experience. His eyes stayed on her. She felt it immediately, the subtle shift in the room. The air tightened. A few people glanced sideways, sensing something coming but unsure whether to stop it. No one did. The general leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the podium. Tell me, he said casually, almost kindly, how many years did you serve? The question landed heavier than it sounded. Some laughed, not loudly, just enough to show they were on his side. Others stayed silent, eyes fixed on the table. Everyone understood the implication. This wasn't curiosity. It was a test. A public measuring stick. She slowly lifted her head. Her face showed no anger. No embarrassment. No rush to defend herself. Her expression was calm, almost unreadable, as if she had heard worse things in places far less comfortable than this room. She stood. The scrape of her chair against the floor echoed more loudly than expected. Conversations died instantly. The general straightened, still smiling, but something flickered behind his eyes, surprise, perhaps. He hadn't expected her to stand. He had expected a number. A small one. Something that would justify the joke. She didn't speak right away. That silence, those few seconds, did more than shouting ever could. It forced everyone to look at her. Really look. The steady way she breathed. The stillness in her shoulders. The way her eyes held the room without demanding anything from it. I served, she said finally, her voice clear and even, long enough. A few people shifted uncomfortably. The general chuckled, trying to regain control. That's not exactly an answer, he said. We're just sharing experience here. She nodded once, respectfully. Yes, sir, we are. Her gaze didn't challenge him. It didn't need to. It was the gaze of someone who had already faced things far more serious than a microphone and a crowd. The room waited. No one knew it yet, but the joke was already over. What came next wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be dramatic, but it would change everything. The silence stretched longer than anyone expected. The general cleared his throat, the smile on his face tightening. At the edges, he hadn't lost control of rooms like this in years, and certainly not to someone he had assumed was junior, unremarkable. He glanced down at his notes, then back up, trying to steer the moment back into familiar territory. Experience, he said again, lighter this time, as if smoothing a wrinkle. That's what builds leaders. Years in uniform. Time served. A few heads nodded automatically. She remained standing. I agree, she said. Years matter, but context matters more. That was when the shift happened, not loud, not sudden, but undeniable. The tone of the room changed, like weather turning before a storm. People leaned forward without realizing it. Pens stopped moving. The general's brows knit together, irritation flickering beneath his practiced calm. Go on, he said, gesturing with one hand. Enlighten us. She inhaled slowly, not to steady nerves, those were already steady, but to choose precision. She knew exactly what she was about to say, and she understood the weight of it. I served during Operation Iron Passage, she said. The words dropped into the room like a heavy object into still water. For a moment, nothing happened. Then someone in the back stiffened. Another officer's eyes widened slightly. A colonel near the aisle lowered his pen, fingers tightening around it. The general's smile vanished altogether. Operation Iron Passage wasn't discussed casually. It wasn't taught in leadership seminars or summarized on slides. It was a campaign that lived in closed files and quiet memories, controversial, costly, and brutal in its consequences. Careers had ended there. Reputations had been reshaped. Some names were forever tied to it, spoken only in careful tones. The general knew that better than anyone. You're mistaken, he said sharply, a reflex more than a response. That operation. I'm not, she replied, still calm. Still respectful. I was assigned to Task Unit 7. Logistics and Extraction. A murmur rippled through the room now, low and uncontrolled. Task Unit 7 was real. Classified once. Declassified just enough to be remembered, but never celebrated. The general's jaw tightened. And how long, he said slowly, were you involved in this assignment? She met his eyes. Long enough to know who ordered what, she said. And who wasn't there when it mattered. That landed harder than any accusation. The room froze. This wasn't bravado. It wasn't bitterness. It was fact, delivered without emotion, without flourish. The kind of truth that didn't need decoration. The general took a step back from the podium, hand tightening around its edge. For the first time since he'd entered the room, he looked unsure of where to stand. You're implying, he began. I'm stating, she corrected gently. Nothing more. A senior officer near the front cleared his throat. General, he said carefully, she's not wrong. Every eye snapped toward him. I reviewed the after-action reports, the officer continued. Years ago, her unit was heavily impacted. The general's face flushed, not red with anger, but pale with something closer to exposure. The room that had once been his now felt hostile, not because anyone was attacking him, but because the truth had a way of rearranging power. She finally sat down, movements controlled, unhurried. She hadn't come to challenge authority. She hadn't come to embarrass anyone. She had come to listen, like everyone else. But she wouldn't allow herself to be reduced to a punchline. The general stared at the table, then up at the audience. He opened his mouth, closed it, then forced a nod. Thank you, he said stiffly. For your service. The words sounded rehearsed, insufficient. She inclined her head in acknowledgement, nothing more. Around them, officers exchanged looks, some of respect, some of realization. The joke had not just failed. It had revealed something uncomfortable. That rank and confidence could still be outranked by experience earned the hard way. No one laughed now, and no one would forget the name she had spoken. The meeting resumed, but it never truly recovered. Slides advanced. Bullet points appeared. Words were spoken about leadership, strategy, future readiness, but they floated above the room, detached from it. Everyone was present, yet no one was fully listening anymore. The name she had spoken still hung in the air, invisible but heavy, pressing against every thought. She sat with her hands folded, posture straight, eyes forward. From the outside, she looked exactly like she had before, composed, professional, unremarkable. But the room no longer saw her that way. Now, she was a reminder. Of choices made, of consequences avoided by some and carried by others. The general tried to reclaim control. He spoke longer than planned, voice firmer, more formal, leaning heavily on authority. He referenced doctrine, command philosophy, the importance of respect. It was all correct. It was also hollow. Authority, once questioned by truth, never sounds the same again. When he finally dismissed the session, chairs scraped back loudly, the sound breaking the tension like glass. People stood, gathered folders, adjusted uniforms, but movement was slow, uncertain. Conversations didn't start right away. No one wanted to be the first to speak. She rose last. As she stepped into the aisle, a lieutenant caught her eye and nodded, small, almost imperceptible, but sincere. A captain followed with a quiet, "Ma'am," voice low with respect. Others looked away, not out of dismissal, but discomfort. It's hard to meet the eyes of someone who carries a truth you've avoided. In the hallway, the noise returned gradually. Footsteps echoed. Doors opened and closed. The building breathed again. She walked alone. Halfway down the corridor, a voice called out behind her. Major. She stopped. The general stood a few steps back. No podium now, no audience. Just a man in uniform, older than before, shoulders heavier than they had been an hour ago. I owe you an apology, he said. She turned to face him fully. For the remark, he continued. And for assuming. She studied him for a moment, not with anger, not with triumph. Just assessment. Apologies mattered less than understanding. I didn't come for one, she said evenly. I know, he replied. That may be what makes it worse. He hesitated, then added, quieter, Iron Passage was complicated. She didn't flinch. It always is, she said. From a distance. The words weren't sharp. They didn't need to be. He nodded slowly, accepting the truth in them. You were right, he said. Some of us weren't where we should have been. She held his gaze. And some of us were, she replied. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he stepped aside, giving her a clear path down the hall, not ceremoniously, not dramatically. Just enough to acknowledge what had shifted between them. She walked on. Outside, the late afternoon air was cool, steady. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray that felt honest rather than threatening. She paused on the steps, breathing it in, letting the quiet settle. She hadn't planned to speak up today. But there are moments when silence becomes its own kind of lie. And she had learned, long ago, the cost of letting lies stand unchallenged. Operation Iron Passage hadn't broken her. It had shaped her, taught her what leadership really meant when plans failed and orders blurred. It taught her that courage wasn't loud. It didn't demand recognition. Often, it simply endured. As she walked toward the parking lot, her phone buzzed. A message. One line. Thank you for saying what needed to be said. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Some truths aren't meant to start conversations. They're meant to end illusions. Behind her, inside the building, the general stood alone for a moment longer than necessary, staring at the floor where she had stood. The joke he had made felt distant now, childish even. He understood, perhaps too late, that authority without humility is fragile, and that real service leaves marks no uniform can display. She drove away quietly, unnoticed by most, unforgettable to a few. And the campaign that once broke him no longer belonged to silence alone.